hello everyone, and welcome back to Speak Up. I am so excited for today's show. We're going to be talking about small business and the government. I know that's kind of deep, right? Okay, so we know that small business is important to our ecosystem. We know that a small business is the foundation of most communities, and without them, we tend to die. Our communities become blighted and we don't survive. So, what does the government do for us? And what can the government do to make sure that our small businesses are sustainable and doing all that it can do? So I'm going to introduce you today to someone that is not only very special to me, he's a good friend, but he's also now the new appointed regional administrator for Region 7 at the SBA. And we all talk about the SBA and we know about the SBA, but we're going to really learn more about what the SBA can do for us. So my special guest today is Versi Lark. Versi Lark will oversee the SBA programs, offices, operations, and in the Great Plains region, serving, guess what? The same region that I serve, Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska, and Missouri. Mr. Lark is a small business venture capital and angel investor, former business executive and entrepreneur. He's a published author, and I'll tell you about his book later on, dedicated to mentoring and aspiring small business owners, helping to create sustainable change in local communities, and accelerating financial literacy, business, and job growth across the Midwest. Prior to the SBA, I'm going to let Versi tell you all about that. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Versi Lark, who is the newest appointee by the President of the United States to the SBA Region 7 Administrator.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on the show, Kim. I'm really, really happy to be here. Where do you want me to begin? You want me to tell a little about myself or just jump right in?
Yeah, so, let's go back. Let's
Okay.
go back to before we get to the SBA part,
Okay.
because I really think that your understanding of small business and finance and personal finances is really important. And what you are doing to help, or what you have done
Sure.
to help small businesses. So I know that you have a book called Make It Rain.
Yes, you do.
And
Yeah.
just tell us about,
Sure.
Make It Rain. Let's start with who you are and why you even wrote Make It Rain.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. So I come from, I'm going to use the word humble beginnings. And I always say, when I grew up, a family of 6 brothers, 1 sister. My father worked at General Motors. My mother worked as a daycare person, and he became disabled. And so after that, the money stopped. And so we spent our time when we had to, dumpster diving. I say people call it recycling now. It's all cool. We'd stand in the back of grocery stores when they handed out, goods. Now people send those to pantries. Those things weren't around when I was growing up, and so that's how we started. And we didn't really know we were poor. We just did what we had to do to make our way. As I became older and wiser, I'm talking about now in my 20s, I became an engineer. Went to Central State University for 2 years, transferred to another school, and I saw the other side. I saw people with a lot more money than what I had and my family had, and I just started to wonder why. And so, over trial and error, lots of years of, I'll call it anger and despair, I finally said I wanted to do something about it. And I got lucky. I got connected with a gentleman, actually a mentor, a boss, and a gentleman that's still a very good friend. His name is Larry Ketchersid. And he gave me my first book, financial book, and it was called The Instant Millionaire. And when I read that book, it kind of unlocked the secret. And ultimately, what I learned is you become a millionaire in your mind before you ever do it in reality.
Yeah.
Didn't tell you how to become a millionaire. It just changed my mindset. And from there, through a lot of trial and error, I learned how to do things with my money, with my wife's help for sure. And I'll give you a simple example. I was working at Compaq Computer Corporation down in Houston, Texas. And Larry gave me the book. And so we started to change our habits. I had lots of debt, had fancy cars, had a nice house. I was rolling, as they say. And, my wife was good. She changed my ways, I'll say it that way. And so when we had our first daughter, one of the things we did was sacrifice. We started living off of my paycheck. At that time, I was making about $33,000 a year. The neighborhood that I lived in, people had, dual incomes. I'd come home from work on a Friday night. They were going out to party, eat, drink, and all that kind of stuff. We were in the driveway playing with the kids. And so I look back now, and those folks are still working, and I was able to retire at a much younger age than they're still working. So what we did is we sacrificed a little bit. But with that, I ended up writing this book because I felt that the financial services industry, after working for companies, they always talked about financial literacy, but they really never gave people the basics to be able to actually do something with their money, no matter how much you make. And so we wrote the book with my wife's help again to make a simple book for people to really learn how to improve their finances. And so far, so good. That's why I wrote that book, and I hope it reaches the masses, because you don't need to know a lot to be able to save, invest, and make money. You just got to do it. And the book gives you very simple, practical tips to do that. And so that's why I wrote it. But actually, that's really why I'm here, where I am today. I started to think about, it's great to talk about saving and investing money, but if you don't have a good job that pays you money, it's pretty hard to save. And so I would talk to people, and they say, you know what, Versa, this sounds good, but you know what? I can barely afford to live. I can't pay for my gas. I can't pay for my kids. Can't pay for childcare. Can't pay for healthcare. And I said, let me back myself up and think about really the root cause of a lot of things that are going on. And it really gets back to jobs.
Right.
And that gets back to small businesses, which are the engine of the United States economy.
Yes.
And so I had an opportunity to participate and was selected in this position as the region administrator under the SBA with the support of President Biden. And I said, you know what, I'm jumping on it. Because really, at the end of the day, we've got to have more jobs and more businesses in communities. And I call them walkable jobs. You shouldn't have to drive, 20, 30 miles to get to have good employment and get a good job that pays you good benefits and have good money. And so that was really the impetus. So it started with the financial book, but ultimately it culminated in me thinking as an engineer, what is the root cause of the problem?
Right.
And the root cause is we don't have enough businesses and jobs in communities that I came from, and the communities that many Americans live in. So that's why I'm here.
And I'm glad that you said that, because when I think about the SBA took their time in finding someone for this position, and they got it right, in my opinion, because we all look for finances.
Sure.
And the SBA it's right now known with the first thing you say SBA, they say they have money.
Absolutely.
They have grants, they have loans, they have this. However, I think they got it right because they have someone that understands the system and understands small business. Yeah. One of the things, this kind of segues into what I want to talk about and how the government works in this ecosystem that we're building. Can you tell us about the SBA and give us some of the history on why it was even created?
Sure. I'll do that. And I'll just tag the line on your ecosystem. At the end of the day, businesses are built with ecosystems. Mm-hmm. People will say, you know what, I did it on my own. It's just not true. Right. There's a lot of things that have to happen for something to come together. And so the SBA was created 1953, a while back, obviously, coming out of the Depression. And the whole mission was to provide aid, assistance, training, and to protect the interests of small business concerns. So at the time, after the Great Depression, you could imagine a lot of people out of work, a lot of businesses had failed. And during that time, small business owners were having difficulty getting access to capital. Sound familiar?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so it was created particularly for that. And then somewhere around 1968, Congress enacted another important thing, and that was basically equal opportunity loan programs. Think about that.
Yes.
1968 equal opportunity
and we're still
loan programs, right?
Yeah.
So we still got work to do, but that's why it was created. It was intended to really change the game. Whether you were white or black or native or Hispanic, everyone was having trouble getting access to capital. And so that was really what this program, and actually that when I think about today, that change, that legislation is actually what spurred a lot of things that are going on in the SBA today.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the pandemic and how the SBA stepped up. I mean, basically they stepped up and said, okay, this is what we're going to do for small businesses.
Absolutely.
We're going to offer the PPP, and then we're going to offer the EIDL loan, which is a disaster type loan. How many minority businesses actually took advantage or were able to take advantage of that?
Yeah, I don't have the percentage in my head, so it's a great question, but let me give you more of the macro numbers. So PPP, about millions of Americans because we're able to make a living because obviously money went into businesses. So businesses didn't have to shut their doors. Some did actually shut their doors, but many did not, and they were able to pay their employees. That's probably most important. The idle loans, I think there's somewhere around 100,000 businesses across the country that were impacted by, I'm sorry, economic injury disaster loans. It's
Yes.
EIDL, EIDL.
Right.
Let me say that. And I would just say this: under the Biden-Harris administration and the bipartisan approval of Congress, a lot more dollars were put in the hands of small business owners who actually were able to provide care for the livelihoods of Americans across the country, and that's probably the most important thing. As I said, I can get back to you on the number in terms of percentages by minority, but there were some people that were denied.
Yeah.
And it really highlighted some of the issues and the disparities in our system. As an example, if you were a small business owner and you didn't pay your taxes, a lot of minority businesses work through cash and maybe are not up on their taxes. They had difficulty trying to get a loan because that was one of the things that we want to make sure is that people actually were in business and actually they had proof of business, and not paying your taxes. It's kind of hard to have proof that you're in business. But for the folks that actually were, I call it playing by the rules at the time, the majority were able to get a loan. And that's really, really good because it allowed people to go home at night, have basically income to put food on the table, pay for gas, pay for heat, the things that you need to survive. And so that's really, really good. But it also showed the inequities,
Yes.
because you think about many of the, I'm going to say Black and Hispanic owned businesses, they're in the services industries.
Yes.
And those industries are very low margin industries. And many times they're living from, I'll call it week to week. And so when the demand for their services dried up, their paychecks dried up. And so many of them actually went out of business. And ideally, I hope they come back. We're seeing a resurgence in terms of minority businesses being started in the last year and a half, really, really fast. But I don't know that it's sustainable. And so we want to make sure the SBA is there to help them. And so one of the things our platform is pretty simple. It's building a better America through entrepreneurship.
And that segues into another thing that people don't realize. So you talked about a lot of our businesses weren't ready.
Yeah.
They weren't ready. And I think when I talk to a lot of businesses through the chamber, we talk about getting ready. I think that we've done a pretty lousy job as community leaders of getting our businesses ready for these times such as this. And nobody really pushes the programs that the SBA offers. We just started our Breakfast with Benefits in the SBA, which is a monthly breakfast that we're going to be offering to small businesses, particularly the Black and Brown business, where in collaboration with the Hispanic Chamber. And the thing that we're trying to do is get people ready for when you go apply for a loan or contracting. Let's talk about some of the programs and resources that you all have.
Yeah, let me start by just saying this. If you're a basketball player, generally speaking, you need to know the rules of the game if you're going to play it well, right? Yeah. If you want to be a police officer, you got to understand the rules before you actually go out on the street, right? You can get hurt or you could hurt someone else. And the same comes to business. I see a lot of people that have great ideas. Before the SBA, I'm an angel investor, a venture capital investor, so I see a lot of great ideas. But then when I pull on the thread, I say, are you really ready to actually launch that business? They don't have a financial background. They don't have a marketing background. They don't have a sales background, et cetera, which is okay. Yeah. And so the SBA really has a set of services to wrap. If you have a great idea or you want to expand your business, they have a set of services and places where you can go to get help. The first one I'll talk about is SCORE. And so I think about SCORE as, in my high school career, I started off, from basically kindergarten through high school. SCORE is really that basics. If you need the basics to figure out how to build a financial pro forma, you don't know how to build a marketing plan, you don't know how to do the research to actually understand your target market, they can help you with the basics, and they can also help you get your business set up properly, right? You need a legal entity set up. You need to have a legal ID. You need to have a bank account. You need to have a tax ID. All those basics before you go into business, they can help you with that. And then there's a group called the SBDC, which is called Small Business Development Centers. And they're located at universities in particular. Matter of fact, we talked about Lincoln before this. We talked about one of the SBDCs at Lincoln University here in the area. And they're at KU and they're out in Columbia as well. But they really take you to the next level. So you've got your business off the ground and now you're thinking, you know what? I'd like to expand my business, or I'd like to go into a different market. They are really there and they're geared to help you kind of take you to that next level. So you start, you launch, and you're growing, then you say, you know what, I want to actually grow and extend my portfolio. That's where the SBDC comes in. And then there's several other organizations I want to mention here. And one's called a WBC, or Women's Business Center. So women have unique needs. And that's not being negative. It's just reality. Women will face things that I would never face. And then there are organizations for veterans and the disabled to help them get off the ground, and then really nurture them with mentors who actually have lived and walked in their shoes, so that you can relate to. It's great to talk to somebody that's been in business and is of your demographic, because they can relate through your challenges, and that really helps you gain trust. But more importantly, they can tell you things that you will not see until you run into them. So it's a way to avoid a lot of pitfalls. So the WBC, Women's Owned Business Centers, Small Business Development Centers, SCORE, Veterans Owned Business Centers, those are organizations that are part paid for by the SBA and or in some cases by other organizations, but they're there specifically as volunteers and or mentors to help you succeed. And so if you want to get ready to be ready, I think that's the phrase that I've heard before. You got to get ready to be ready. And the best way to get ready to be ready is surround yourself with people who care about what you want to do and help you become what you want to be. And if you want to be a good business owner and a successful one, put a team around you and you use the SBA. This is all stuff I didn't know until I joined the Biden administration. So I've learned these things as a business owner. I wish I had taken advantage of, because I had a lot of hard knocks.
Right.
And so we are where we are. And now I want to share what I've learned so far with you, the audience here. And obviously, Kim, thanks for this opportunity.
Well, and I'm going to throw in a shameless plug for the Heartland Black Chamber and the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Our breakfast with benefits is get ready to be ready. Yeah. Go out on our platforms and look for it and register for our May Get Ready to Be Ready breakfast with benefit. And that's with the SBA. Yes. We're working with the experts, and we are connecting you with those resources.
Let me talk about one other program there, just so I don't miss it. So one of the things the SBA has also done is launched a program called Community Navigators. It's a pilot program. And what we're really doing, and one of the reasons I'm happy to be here, is we're trying to reach into every community, every underserved and rural community we can, to connect people who are business owners or want to be business owners through this Community Navigator program. And so they can help get you, there's a lot of programs in the SBA. They can help get you started and get you connected. And once you get connected, these are relationships that most people that are successful keep for life. Yes. And so those relationships that you start with when you get your business going, don't forget about them. Stay connected to them, because as we in the SBA and the federal government bring about more programs, that gives you an avenue to stay aware of what's changing, what you can take advantage of to build a great business and build better ecosystems in your communities.
So, with Speak Up was created so that we could talk specifically about the Black community. Absolutely. And about how do we rebuild our ecosystem, get our villages back in place. I had on our show last week, we had the faith community and our ecosystem. And one thing that the imam talked about was the fact that we need to start talking village, because that's our lingo. And so how do we get our village back together? And collaboration is probably the most important. One of the things that we're doing now as chambers is, number one, the Hispanic Chamber, the Heartland Chamber. I know I keep doing these shameless plugs, and I'm going to do that. We are collaborators. Yes. And because of our collaboration, we have now started bringing our resources together, and we can see the difference that it's making in the business community. Yeah. Bringing the SBA on, and I keep wanting to go back because I want people to understand how much and how important it is for the government's place in our ecosystem, in our village. We need the creation of it speaks for itself. Just a little bit more elaboration on why it's important for the building.
Yeah, so pretty simple. I always talk about three things: public, private, and me. Right? People say it takes two to tango. It actually takes three, right? You've got to have the people within a community that want something and want to build something better. And then you work and partner with private industries and government agencies to bring the most power that you can into that community. Like say a rising tide lifts all boats. Yes. And so the more we build within those communities, the more we collaborate in those communities, the more we reach out and connect with you, the better off we're going to be. But I always say, it takes three to tango. You got to want it. Don't get me wrong. We can talk and we can elaborate and we have a great discussion. But at the end of the day, you got to give something to get something. So if you really want to grow a business or grow your community, there are resources that are available to you. And they are, quite frankly, I've learned right next door on Troost, there's a SCORE facility right on Troost Avenue. So if you live close to Troost and you've never heard of that, go to Troost and connect with the folks at SCORE there. We talked about Lincoln University. There are all kinds of resources around you, capital, angel investing and venture capital funding backed by the SBA. Guess what? You guys would have heard of Alt Capital. They're here for you, but sometimes you got to get out of your neighborhood or get out of your comfort zone to go approach those. Communities cannot recover without the citizens, the business owners that are there today, the bigger businesses that, quote unquote, we spend our money with. Let me be clear there. We spend a lot of money. I think about $1 billion goes from the Black community. I'm sorry, $1 trillion from the Black community to lots of big organizations. Hispanic is about 1.9. So you think about Asian, Indian, et cetera, it's probably somewhere between $4 and $5 trillion we spend outside our communities.
Yes.
And it's time to bring some of that money back home. But we can bring our own money, but we should also leverage the power of the government, obviously, as I said, and the power of those companies that we spend with to make sure they're investing, not just to get your money in advertising, but to actually bring something better than what they bring today. We need to hold the business accountable. Let me be clear. We need to hold the government accountable. We need to hold ourselves accountable. It takes 3 to tangle, more than 2. And I think if we can bring the 3 parties together, we're gonna see lots of rural and underserved communities start to revitalize themselves again and be thriving once again. When I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, it was thriving at one time.
Yeah.
Now I go back and it's blighted. And it's just it's a horrible thing to go back, but I don't give up.
Yeah.
And so I go back and I sleep on my mom's couch, right in the same neighborhood I grew up with. I'm not going to leave it until we turn it around. So that's my commitment. So you got to be that committed, and I hope the folks in the audience are committed to do that. We'll help you. That's what the SBA is here for.
Wow. And that kind of I want to just make it clear too also, because right now there is a whole lot of grants out here, and small businesses have become very dependent upon grants. And right now it's a need, because we did go through a pandemic and people really need the money. But I don't want people to misunderstand that if I go to the SBA, they're gonna give me some money and I'm gonna be successful. The SBA is offering you the tools and the access to the things that you're gonna need to scale up or to start. And you still have to do the work. I do want to talk a little bit about grants though, because unfortunately, especially in the Black community, because I can speak on the Black community, I get phone calls on a consistent basis. I know at least 3 times a day I get a call saying, I need help on getting a grant. And as a for-profit person myself, I understand that I have to build revenue, and it's not going to come from a grant. Can you kind of touch on that?
Yeah. So I always try to tell, when I'm mentoring and talking to business owners, I first say, do you have a viable business idea? And if you do, you should not have to rely on grants, quite frankly, to be the lifeblood of your business. Now, we had a pandemic, big difference, right? Big shock to the system. Everybody needed help to stay alive and to survive. But if you really believe you have a viable business, then you should be able to find revenue through sales. And if you can't generate sales, it's the best time to talk to SCORE or an SBDC to say, what am I doing wrong? How can I pivot so that I can either change the way I'm approaching the business, or maybe you need to pivot your business. I'll give you an example. I won't name the name of the business, but before the pandemic, this person had a great business idea, but he wasn't getting sales. When the pandemic occurred, he said, guess what? If I wasn't getting sales before, I'm not going to get them now. And so he changed his whole business in a matter of months. And now he's on a very good clip. Literally, his revenue has gone from zero to over $100,000. But you got to be willing to make those pivots. So grants are great I call them grants in my mind, that's a nonprofit approach, but it's not going to create a sustainable business. And what the SBA really wants to do through its programs is to provide you the tools to be a much more sustainable business. And that's really what's so important. You mentioned something that kind of takes me back. There are 3 key programs I want you to be aware of that the SBA offers beyond SCORE and the training. The first one is for small businesses, in particular for women and minority-owned businesses. They're called microloans.
Yes.
These are loans from $500 to $50,000 that are available. Now, you got to come in with a business plan, but think about what I just said. The majority of businesses, $500 to $50,000, you can start a lawn service, you can start a restaurant, You can start whatever you choose. That's a lot of money to start a business. So that's great. And then you kind of move up to another level. It's called small disadvantage loans. That's from $50,000 to $350,000 with the
Wow.
actually sweeping legislation that just occurred in the Biden administration, expanded it from 250 to 350. That covers 90% of all small businesses need, especially during a startup.
Yeah.
Big capital available.
Yeah.
The next one I'll talk about is, I'm going to use the word contracting. There are two programs that help you get revenue. So rather than going for a grant, figure out how to do business with the government. The government buys a lot of services,
Yes.
right? And we sell a lot of goods after those services are used. And so if you connect in with the SBA, you can take advantage of what's called small disadvantaged business opportunities for procurement. If you can certify yourself as a minority business owner or enterprise, right? That's self-service, easy to do. Again, if you're 51% owned by a minority, you can do that and you can start to do business with the government. There's a much more, what's the right word? A longer term opportunity for contracting, but it's called an 8A, number 8A program. What that program really is not a contracting program. It's a program to get people ready to do contracting. And then you got to do the hunting.
Yeah.
And what I would say is, what I've seen when people fail in these programs is they go into these programs thinking, I'm in the program and contracts are going to come to me and I'm going to do business.
Right.
It doesn't work like that.
No.
Business development means just that. We're going to give you the tools to succeed.
Right.
Yeah. So, but those programs really get you started with the training. Loans are available for you, and then there's contracts that could be available for you if you're willing to hunt for a living and go get those deals.
Yeah. So, we're going to wind up in a minute here, but I got to ask this question. As the regional administrator, what are some goals you've set for the administration?
Yeah, it's a great question. So my goals are pretty simple. I came into this position with one goal, and that is to see more businesses spring up across the region. That means Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, and Nebraska, and more jobs that are walkable in the communities that I come from. That's, at the end of the day, that's what I'm after, and that's what I want to do, and what I want to see. So I say at the end, when I'm out of this position, if I'm seeing an ecosystem being built, that you see more businesses spring up and people getting good paying jobs in the communities they live in, then I would consider it a win. And that's why I'm here. So
tell the listeners, how can they learn more about the SBA?
Sure. Yeah, so it's easy. You can go to www.sba.gov, www.sba.gov, and you can go on that site. And if you're looking for training, you can just type in training and you'll find access to the SCORE and or SBDCs, WDBCs, those things I talked about. If you want to look at contracting, it's there for you. If you want a loan, it's all there for you. That's the best place to go. And if you can't figure anything else out, you can just send me an email and we'll figure out how to get you connected. Yeah.
Or you can sign up to come to Breakfast with Benefits and the SBA. We will be having our May event is May the 11th. We meet at Hy-Vee Arena and it is a fantastic time. Sign up. Don't miss it. So this ends our episode today for Speak Up. Again, this is a platform for us to talk about all things in the ecosystem in the Black community. Every week on Televida, you will be able to hear us speak up. And if you have something you want to speak up about, give us a call. You can always reach out to the Heartland Black Chamber of Commerce. We're located at 4001 Blue Parkway in Kansas City, Missouri, and 709 North 6th Street in Kansas City, Kansas. Our number is 913-948-7680. And just tell them you want to speak up. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.